welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be talking about how past traumas impact on relationships, especially when you're looking for your soulmate. Now, sometimes people are not even aware that they're experiencing any trauma. I'm sure you've been in a situation where you would just be triggered by something and you'd be like, where did that come from? I wasn't aware that I was so angry about something like this. I don't understand why I'm so triggered by this. Well, sometimes previous relationships have traumatized us. Sometimes childhood situation, something that happened in our childhood that we can't even remember that it happened. Almost like having a flashback that will just send you off in a totally unexpected way. So dealing with past traumas, even if you don't think you're traumatized by past relationships, it is worth examining what it is that's stopping you from being in the kind of relationship that you're looking for. Now, I'm not talking about those kinds of people who say, oh, I'm looking for someone that has lots of money, I want someone that's earning six figures and someone that's got their own car. That is not always realistic. Even though it's good to aim for some basic attributes, some qualities, some traits in a partner, talking about the kinds of material things that you want them to have isn't really a good basis for a relationship. However, in spite of that, you still need to make sure that they are able to take care of themselves so that they're not going to be expecting you to be the one that will always be paying for things. And I appreciate that for some people, this is quite controversial because some women feel the man should always be paying for things. And that is how they perceive a relationship. They want equality on one hand, but they still want the man to pay for everything. So you need to kind of, when I'm talking about things that might be traumatizing you, it might be that your expectations is what is stopping you from being in meaningful relationship, not even anything traumatic that's happened in the past. So today I'm just dealing with the actual things that have been traumatic that's happened to you, not things to do with like, oh yeah, I want a six-figure man. I want him to be tall. I want him to be handsome. I want him to, dress in a particular way, which, as you know, these are sometimes stopping you from meeting just quality people because your expectations are not realistic. However, where trauma is concerned, it could be that you're repelling the kinds of people you want to meet because when you get into their company, they're triggering you off in a particular way. I don't know if you've ever been in that position where you've said something like, I don't know what it is about that person, but they just give me the creeps. As soon as I'm in a certain company, sometimes we have to examine it beyond that feeling. Of course, that feeling is very indicative of something that may have happened in our past that's making us feel that way. It could actually genuinely mean that there's danger in that situation because, at the end of the day, we're spiritual beings. We pick up spiritual things in the atmosphere. And so it's very important for us to examine that. I certainly remember when I was thinking about dating again and so on, I realized that I may be carrying a lot of trauma from things that have happened, from being homeless in the past, from, going through a divorce, from different, things that potentially can make you feel like you don't want to be alive anymore. People have gone through some very life-changing experiences and they've not really had time to deal with that. So one of the goals for a new season in your life, maybe after you've maybe come out of a relationship, a long-term relationship that you've decided isn't going anywhere, you don't want that relationship anymore, you may decide to take a back step and say, is there anything that could affect me going into a new relationship that I'm not fully aware of? And it works both ways. It could work in the sense that you keep going for the same kind of situation, so you find yourself traumatized again in the same way. You often hear of stories of women who keep attracting situations that they find themselves in a domestic abusive relationship. Or, the other way around, it could be a man that constantly finds himself compromised in some way because, we know that he's genetically stronger, generally speaking, and then he finds himself being abused, physically abused by the relationship that he's in because he can't, he's been taught that he can't defend himself physically. And so you kind of have to review and think, why am I finding myself in these kinds of toxic relationships? Am I getting over something? Is there something in my past? I certainly vividly remember a friend of mine who's now happily married, but she found herself in a domestic abusive relationship. But she didn't want to come out of that relationship because she felt that was normal. She said, I've done something wrong. That's why I was being beaten. And after the beating, I usually get an apology. And then I get some chocolate, and then I'll get some flowers. And so for me, that is how it is. But it took her coming to a place where she couldn't take that anymore. And she had someone that's able to reflect it to her that this is not normal behavior. And then we were able to discuss it. And I was able to say to her that, did you see this kind of thing modeled in your past? And guess what? Yes, you've guessed it. When she was growing up, her father used to beat up her mother and then gave her chocolate and flowers as a way of saying sorry. So this was what she unconsciously grew up with, that was normal. I certainly remember the time that I thought it was normal for brides to be pregnant on their wedding day because I saw so many pregnant brides. So it's very powerful. The images that we see, the things that we experience when we're growing up, we might think it has absolutely no impact, but it is when we begin to try and form relationships of our own that we see that it does have impact. And furthermore, sometimes we have traits of fathers and mothers, the people we grew up with. There are things that I do now that I think to myself, where did I get this habit from? And it's not necessarily a good one. But then when I think about it, I realize that actually it's in my family. One of the examples that I can give you right now is high blood pressure. In my family, most of my family members are on high blood pressure tablet. And I was going down the same trajectory. Then I realized that we also had a lot of things in common. We were mostly high achievers. We were mostly people who were very, very much hard-working people. And another thing was that we shout a lot. In fact, I've had to learn to moderate my voice because I can be shouting and I'm just talking. So all those things created a very toxic physical state. So once I realized that I was going to be going down that same route of high blood pressure, I needed to be intentional to change my diet, change my eating habits, change my exercise or lack of exercise habits, and slow down much more. I realized that I wasn't a 9 to 5 kind of person. I didn't want to be stressing to get to everywhere on time by this time and so on. So we have to look at the things that may be stopping us from getting that relationship that we say we want, because it is becoming a stumbling block. Because when we get so far in the relationship, we're triggered, or we don't give certain relationships a chance because we're triggered. So what is your trauma? You might not see it as trauma, but again, if you're able to give permission to someone to let you know how you're coming across, even the person that you're seeing. My husband right now understands certain aspects of my personality because of the understanding, because of the way we've talked about these things, that this is what's happened in the past that's made me a bit more this way or that way. So there's understanding. But when there's no understanding, it can be very damaging to your relationship. And good relationships are not born, they're made. You have to make it, you have to put the work in to get what you want out of it. So what is your trauma? Is there anything that has happened in your childhood that was unpleasant? Have you given yourself permission to actually revisit it? And I know some of them can be very, very difficult to think about, much less try to deal with. But they will stop us from getting what we want in relationships. And it could not even necessarily with a soulmate. It could be stopping you from having good relationships at work. You've heard of things like emotional intelligence, for example. People often talk about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to be able to read a situation and act accordingly to ensure that you get a desired outcome without making other people around you isolated or feel like they don't matter. And it's just that ability to read the situation. Many people don't have that ability because something else from their past is stopping them from moving forward. I've watched quite a lot of different shows on YouTube. There's one particular one that I've recently discovered that I'll probably be doing a reaction to at some point, called Pop the Balloon or Find Love. It's very, very popular at the moment. And when I watch it, I kind of see the way people are reacting to people, and they're just triggered by just sometimes some person's presence, and they don't even know why. They just triggered. Oh, you remind me of my old boyfriend. Oh, they just triggered, and they just pop their balloon that they don't even, before they've even heard a word that person has today. Now, these situations, it's not going to help them. They've come onto a popular channel to find love, but unfortunately, they've just excluded themselves on something that's got nothing to do with the person, but to do with a trigger from a previous trauma. So what can we do with things that we're conscious or unconscious of? Is begin to be very much aware of the things that make us feel sad, things that make us feel happy, and things that make us feel mad. Yeah, things that make you feel sad, things that make you feel happy, and things that make you mad, like angry. Then once you've realized what makes you angry, mad, or sad, or happy, think about why you're angry about that. Spend some time to think about why you're triggered like that. And you'll begin to unpack it. Actually, this happened, that happened. What makes you sad? I mean, I'm a softie. I would be watching a film and I'll be sad. A lot of people are like me. We're very emotional when we're watching certain things, whereas we're connecting at some level. That's why we have that emotional reaction to it. We're connecting at some level to it. And this is why, obviously, expressing things through films, through things like what we're doing now is very important, because it gives us time to think about why we're connecting with people in that way. My desire is for you to have the relationship that you want and not be triggered every time that you try and get that relationship. And these are not necessarily things people want to talk about. They're always about the romance. They're about the, going on the dates, but they're not thinking about how they might sustain those relationships. And what makes a relationship sustainable is when both parties that are involved in that relationship have had the opportunity to work on things that could destroy the relationship. It's often said that communication is one of the biggest things that destroy a relationship. A lack of communication or too much of the wrong kind of communication, gossiping and things that will not make the relationship move forward. So we need to find a way of being able to put ourselves out there and be authentic to the people that we around us and say, listen, if you see me doing funny things, if you see me doing things that are not okay, can you just feed it back to me? Because sometimes we're not even aware that we're doing them, or we're saying them, or we're being in a particular way. And then once that's fed back to us, then we might have an opportunity to think, actually, yes, for me, it's like I'm shouting. I used to wonder whether it was because I had some traumatic experience when I was younger. But I realized that when I'm passionate about something, when I'm really passionate about something, my voice starts to go up. And it's something I've had to work on intentionally, because I was often misunderstood about being angry about a situation, whereas I was actually, in my opinion, being passionate. But because it was coming off as like I'm angry, I had to work on that and work on moderating my voice, being a little bit calmer. Even when I'm on the phone, I'm shouting. And the other person on the receiving end will be thinking, why? So these are things we need to look at to be successful with our relationships this year. Are we being triggered by things of the past? Are we thinking about what it is, how we're coming across? Are we communicating what we need to our friends, our family, and our work colleagues? Because sometimes there are things that we need to help us to be better at managing relationships. It could be that you need people to give you time to reflect on things when they have shared something with you, and say, then you need to verbalize, say, look, if you don't mind, if you can give me a little bit of time to reflect on this before I come back with an answer. We women, we tend to be very much talkers, talk. And sometimes, again, this is not everyone. Sometimes men tend to be more reflective. So when you say something and you say, yeah, and so I need an answer now, and the man just needs time to think about what you've said. But also you need to, as a man, communicate that, look, I need some time to reflect on what you've just said, and I'll come back to you with an answer, with a solution, with a reflection, after I've had time to reflect. So think about how you communicate what you need to others to help them to understand you better. Think about how you want others to communicate with you. It's often said that do unto others as you would have them do to you. But sometimes we're not doing that. We know what we want other people to do to us, but we're not doing that to other people. Do you see how there's going to be a double standard, a mishmash of expecting things? And this is where I said about women who say they want equality, yet they expect the man to pay for everything. Come on. How does that work? You're both working. Even sometimes you, as the woman, you're earning more money than the person you're going out with, yet you expect that other person to pay for everything. That is not going to make a good relationship last for a long time. At some point, that man is going to check out and say, you are high maintenance. And once a man feels like a woman is high maintenance, he is not coming back, because he's going to feel stressed that I'm always spending. What am I getting in return? A relationship has to be a win-win, and there has to be understanding. It's rather better for you to have a very much affordable date where you're not spending a lot of money, but there's a lot more conversation going on. And this cuts across every age. And I appreciate that, especially the 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, they make such a big fuss. I've seen it on social media where, for a date, people are spending so much money just on a date, £250, £300. And for Valentine's or, any special occasion, they're doing, special surprises, balloons, and all these things that is so much more financially motivated than it is about seeing whether you're compatible, whether you get along. And remember, if you're going to be in a long-term relationship with someone, you need to be able to work together. So their money and your money need to stretch together if you're ever going to get married or decide that this is going to be a relationship for life, not just for Christmas or for Valentine or for the next event where you just looking for someone to buy you nice things. So be realistic with your expectation. Watch the traumatic things in your life that might be impacting on your relationship. What is it that's triggering you? Is it something that you've been able to put your finger on? Do you actually need someone to talk to about it? It doesn't even have to be your friends. You can use the services of, trained people who are trained to talk to you about these things, trained counselors, people you don't even know that you might be able to say, I feel this way. For some of you, you just need to get to the point where you decided that I need to talk to somebody about my past, and I need to do it before I can move forward. So it could be members of your family. You might have even forgotten some things that have happened in your past, but you keep getting triggered by things and you're not sure why. I've done that in my own life. Sometimes I've gone back to talk to family members who knew, because we don't think that matters very much, but it does. Even sometimes people we've never grown up with, there's something that's impacting on us. Maybe I'll give you an example. Research has shown that children that are born through a traumatic experience that the mother had has an impact on the child. So a mother is pregnant, you can imagine, and she's had a very traumatic pregnancy, traumatic experience. That trauma apparently sometimes is passed on to the child, and that child is got, you can imagine the same way that maybe a woman that is maybe addicted to some alcohol or drugs or something while she's pregnant. If you can imagine that has an impact on the child. There's some children born and they're having withdrawal symptoms from alcohol or from some drug because the mother was actually taking those things. So if that can be the case, the same thing can be for emotional trauma that a woman is having when she's pregnant. And that it's got nothing to do with, something you can remember, but it's having an effect on you. So actually talking, if you have access to your biological parents, is very helpful sometimes, because some things you have no business knowing what happened, but it's triggering you when you're older. This is very much things that are happening around us, and people are not talking about it. They just keep being in continuous failed relationship after failed relationship, and they keep doing the same thing, and they're expecting this different result. Let's look very carefully at how we can be the best version of ourselves in order to be able to attract someone that will be able to be their best version of themselves. I certainly remember very clearly one of the things that my husband and I did before we got married was to think about and look about both our past and see how it's going to affect us. We actually went through something called deliverance from our past traumas on both sides, to be able to now both connect, especially if it's a new relationship, second marriage, for example, or you've been in multiple different relationships before. You need to see, okay, what did I learn from that previous relationship? Why didn't it work? And then work on those things that didn't work, so that when you go into your new relationship, you're able to say, okay, this is what I've learned from the last one, before you move on to the new one. Because otherwise you'll take the same set of things, sets of beliefs into the new relationship, and then it won't work again. So that's why oftentimes people say people who have been divorced before and they go into a new relationship, they're likely to be divorced again and again and again. The reason why statistics sometimes show that is because they've not dealt with the reason why they were divorced the first time. And they've just taken the whole baggage into the next relationship, and they've not examined all these things. So moving forward, before we come to a conclusion of this particular video, I want you to think about a relationship that you've had. Why didn't it work? Did it trigger you in some way? What is it you could do differently? Do you need to talk to someone? Do you need to deal with unresolved issues from the past? And if you've never had a relationship, and there are many people who have never had any relationship, what's your fear? Why are you afraid? Because sometimes it's fear of the unknown. It's fear someone might, I know women who are afraid someone's going to take all their money. They're going to have a scammer. They're so scam conscious that they've actually not given themselves permission to actually develop any relationship. Life is a risk, but we can take calculated risks. So why are you so afraid? Why are you so afraid? You have to examine that. Why am I so afraid? Life is a risk. We get on aeroplanes, we don't know the pilot, do we? Yet we trust the pilot will get us to where we need to go. Why do we do that? Because we take a calculated risk. We hope the airline has checked their credentials. We hope they've had experience of flying. We have insurance. We do these things to make sure that we take that risk. In the same way with a relationship, you do your background checks. If you met them online, stick to the rules of online. Some people will tell you that let's come offline as soon as possible. Yes, but there's some guidelines within the online system to keep you safe. Time reveals sometimes the kind of issues that people might have. But if you don't give yourself that time, then you might not be able to work with them or work on those issues. And hence why you have to have realistic expectations. No good asking somebody that, okay, are you able to pay for my, lifestyle? You just come across as high maintenance, and nobody wants a relationship with a high maintenance person who is expecting you to bankroll their lifestyle. So it could be that in itself could be a traumatic thing. It could be that that's what you've seen. That's what the models have been. So we're sending mixed messages sometimes because of traumatic things that have happened in our lives in the past. I'm hoping that you've got something out of this conversation, and please drop your comments. Let me have your thoughts about what you think about the issue of trauma being a reason why we don't move forward. And I will be reacting to some videos in the future just to kind of pick some of these things, and maybe together we can identify some of these traits that we see in people who are trying to find love online. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Please share, like, and subscribe. And do check out my other channels. I have a TikTok channel as well. Thank you, and I'll see you at the next one.